Good afternoon. Is this on?
It is.
I'm here to change the pace a little bit because I have submitted to the committee, through its chair, the copy of something that I want to talk about. It is a videotape that was taken in 1985 and the transcript from a hearing in 1985. It was held at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility. It was, in my experience, a unique public hearing. Present at it it was sponsored by the New York State Women's Division, but it had all of criminal justice officialdom from the governor's office on down. And what that hearing essentially was about 12 women who testified. And I urge you to look at that tape and to read that transcript for the following reason. That was 27 years ago. And the story that was told in that hearing was an amazing story, but we could tell it tomorrow, and I'm going to try and tell it to you briefly today. To do it, I want to just read you a paragraph from a report, a follow-up report written in 1987 by the Committee on Domestic Violence and Incarcerated Women, entitled Battered Women and Criminal Justice, The Unjust Treatment of Battered Women in a System Controlled by Men. Subtitle. The women who testified at the Bedford Hills hearing were survivors of domestic violence. Of the 12, most had been convicted of killing their spouses, former spouses, or live-in partners. 3 had maximum life sentences. The average maximum sentence of the others was approximately 15 years. They had been, according to their own accounts, battered women, victims of the men that they ultimately killed. Nearly all are women who had never been convicted of a crime until their convictions for the crimes to which they were inexorably led, the killing of men who had brutalized them. The nature of their crimes and the existence of a very low recidivism rate for those who have committed murder and manslaughter provide substantial evidence that these women and others like them are not a danger to society. The wisdom of imprisoning them at all is certainly questionable. And that's what I wanted to talk to you today about, and the act, the Victim Survivors Act. I wanted to address it because the same thing that was happening then is happening now. The 12 women in Bedford came to prison having been propelled there by a variety of circumstances. They were represented, most by public defense lawyers who did not develop a relationship with them, did not get to the underlying battering that they had experienced, could not communicate with them. Some of them, the thing that was present in all of them, but they found it out only after they went to prison. They discovered that they had been battered when they were collected by the women's division in the prison. They didn't know it beforehand. They didn't know it when they were tried. They didn't know it while they were being tried. Their lawyers didn't know it. They couldn't even talk about it. But they all realized when they got to talking that, yes, we had a lack of self-esteem and we were emotionally dependent on a dominant male. It was what we talk about in terms of battered defense as learned helplessness, the inability to clearly think about escape, and a kind of emotional paralysis then, still now, imposed on them by traditional beliefs about the sanctity of home and family. And what I think was most extraordinary when you analyze these cases, as we did, because after the lights went down and after the hearing was over and after the officialdom left, the backup center was actually left with others, the women's division and women's groups, to try and do something about those 12 cases and others like them. Every one of those clients needed a lawyer. They needed someone to look at their case. They needed to look at what had happened that they were coerced into pleas. What were the defenses that were missing? What was the mitigation that nobody raised? What was the nature of the ineffective assistance of counsel? Because they all had it. They hadn't even known themselves of the problem, so they couldn't communicate it. And to the extent that they could have done that, there wasn't very robust sentencing advocacy. They were without experts, without time, without the ability to communicate that. We still have that going on. So your bill, which proposes the opportunity to bring women out of the dark shadows of prison, women who shouldn't have been there in the first place, who were ignored by police, who were ignored by courts, who were ignored by prosecutors, where nuances were missed by defense lawyers, they should have the right to reopen those cases. I spoke to a woman in my staff yesterday when she saw on the calendar that I was testifying. She said, "Can I come down and listen? This is so important to me." Because she has a case just like this. And people are eager to see this bill pass, and it's important that it happen. I want to just do something also right now. One of the women who was in that hearing has remained a very good friend of the Defenders Association and now serves on our client advisory board. And when I told her that I was testifying, when I shared with her the bill, and she indicated that is a terrific bill, she sent me something which she asked me to read to you, and I'd like, if I might, to ask your indulgence for this brief paragraph. Here we are once again trying to protect women from those men who love them. I read this bill with great eagerness that another step will be taken to ensure a woman's right to be safe in her own home. We send troops all over the world to fight terrorism in order for us to continue to enjoy the liberties we have. Unfortunately, we tolerate terrorism in our own households, physical, sexual, economic, verbal, and other types of abuse. The perpetrators of this terrorism, not some foreign entity, but the men we have married. The right to beat your spouse is not written in the fine print of the marriage license, but instead instilled in our children as they are silent witnesses to the treatment their mothers endure at the hands of their fathers. I think this bill is a children's bill. It's, of course, a mother's bill and a lover's bill and an intimate partner's bill. It's a women's bill, but it is a bill that you need to pass to break a cycle that I'm here to report. I urge you all to look at the videos that I gave to Senator Hassel-Thompson. I urge you to read that transcript. There is nothing new under the sun except, and this is an important except, that this bill ought to pass this year. It is a terrific contribution to our jurisprudence. It is long overdue. It is absolutely necessary. And all over this state, there are women eagerly standing, sitting, and praying on tiers, local jail tiers, Bedford tiers, Auburn tiers, that want this bill to pass because they have a story to tell which has been suppressed. And we have a need to inculcate training among defense lawyers so that this nuance is never missed again. And it would help us do that, and we would urge it to be passed. I'm grateful for being invited, and I thank you for giving me the time to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, John.